All right, fellas. So we've got three teams to go, and these three in that to be determined category. And so, Chad, let's go to your Toronto Maple Leafs. Third in this division in terms of points percentage. We predicted them to finish first in this division before the start of the season. It's a post All-Star break now, coming off a loss on Monday night against the New York Islanders at home. So, yeah, let's get into the Maple Leafs here.
You want me to go first or Case?
You go.
Yeah, you go.
Okay, well, I think the story of the Leafs this season has been the improvements that they made offensively have not weighed out or outweighed the subtractions they made defensively, which is clearly that.
I have to give you props before you keep going for your preseason talk about this team. You said, they're going to be still in the top 5 for expected goals, but they're going to fall deeper in the expected goals against, because I think, last year they were high in both. They did very well in both, but you're right. You nailed it. Yeah.
Well, I mean, listen, I know this team because they piss me off so much, and I didn't like a lot of the moves that Brad Treliving made going into this season, but I was willing to give it a chance, see a different version of this same team we've seen over the last 5, 6, 7 years now. But yeah, going back to that point, Case, I said that their offense should get a bit better, so that has happened. They're third in the league in expected goals right now, 7th in actual goals, but they are generating more than they were last season, at least based on relative to the rest of the league. And defensively, they're 17th in expected goals against and actual goals against, which is far lower than it was last season, but right exactly where I anticipated it to be for this team. I said I think they'd be around 15th, and they're 17th. So it's one of those things where, it just comes down to the ads that they made on offense have come at the sacrifice of defense. And the pros of adding that offense have not outweighed the cons of subtracting from the defense. And look, maybe that is, a healthy John Klingberg who found his game later in the season. Maybe that would make a difference, because obviously that's a big blow. But at the end of the day, you could kind of see this coming from the start of the season. And look, they're not in first place in the division where we predicted them to be. But that being said, they kind of are blowing some stupid games and playing pretty good hockey. So I don't know. I don't feel like we're too wrong on the team, but I also don't feel like we're completely right. And that's why I have them in the to be determined category.
I'm going to say something obvious sounding, but they're good in their wins and they're bad in their losses. That's really the case with Toronto.
Yeah.
And I think that one of the biggest problems with the back end, at least, is that there's been so much juggling. I don't know if you blame that on the players or you blame that on coaching or what, but when there's so much juggling of pairs, you lose chemistry and turnovers happen, and the defense suffers. I'm seeing that in New Jersey too because of injuries. Well, I think Toronto, I was looking, I think there's 2 pairs over 200 minutes played together. For comparison, there's 7 in Tampa. So it's a lot of juggling on the back end. Obviously, Morgan Riley and Brody have played 600 minutes together or something, but the rest of it, it's just hard to get in a groove and hard to be consistent when it's changing so much.
Yeah, and when it comes to the defense as well, I have to say this: since the playoffs last year, I have never seen Morgan Riley play as good as he is currently. This is, I think, the best regular season of Morgan Riley's career, and he just has built off of the incredible playoff performance from last season. So he, I believe anyway, has gotten better. Everybody else, aside from maybe Jake McCabe, has taken a bit of a step back. And on a team where they don't have a lot committed financially to their defense, you just can't afford for that to happen. A player like TJ Brody, love the guy, has been extremely consistent his entire time in Toronto, has looked his age this year. And speaking of looking his age, Mark Giordano, the oldest skater in the league, has looked his age this year. He's been playing on the third pair, and boy, he has made some tough tough plays out there and just doesn't look like himself. Another guy, Timothy Liljegren. This was the year that he was supposed to step up and play consistent top 4 minutes, but he's been kind of pushed aside by Sheldon Keefe for a guy like Simone Benoit, because Benoit plays a more physical game, and you need that to a certain extent. And I don't think Benoit is a top 4 guy at all. I don't even know if he's in the top 6 on a good cup team, but he's kind of filled a huge
been working
gap.
Out. He's been working out lately.
He's okay. Like he's fine. I have no problem with it. But like, this is the first year that I can confidently say that there are legitimately some major holes on the back end of this team, and it's showing in the underlying and surface level numbers.
Can I say a stat that I actually don't have any plans of going further into discussion about this, but I just thought it was an interesting stat, and maybe it's resulting in the defense being beaten up or something. They lead the league in hits taken, so being hit, by over 120 hits.
That's wild.
So, for example, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's like 10 teams in the 900 hit range. Toronto has been hit 1,152 times.
And you know why that's even more interesting and kind of incredible? Is because this year's version of this team doesn't have the puck nearly as much as previous versions.
Yeah, well, they're getting beaten up.
Which is crazy. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of wild. That's one of the big issues, really, is not getting hit, although I guess that is an issue as well. But a big issue for me is that they just don't have the puck. Like, they're still generating a ton of offense, but it's not really down the lineup. It's the top 2 lines, and in fact, it's the top 3 guys, whatever lines they happen to be on. Like, they're getting nothing from players like Bertuzzi and Domi. Like, Robertson's been good, but he hasn't played every game this year. It's just, I don't know, man. Like, there's just so many holes in this team, and I hate to do revisionist history here, but I just feel like if Kyle Dubas was still the GM, this team would look a hell of a lot different and, frankly, better defensively. And I think that's the main problem with this team.
Well, I think you're kidding yourself if you think that this team is a contender. Like, I'm sorry. You're kidding yourself. I'm sorry, Chad. You probably already say that to yourself anyways. But I do think that most of the surgery to the roster will occur in the offseason from Brad Treliving, in particular on the back end. But it's kind of like what we were saying about Tampa. Like, this team is not deep enough. There are some real holes on the blue line and up front. But their stars have been their stars. Matthews has been incredible on a 70-goal pace. Nylander, obviously, he gets the big extension. Morgan Riley, Mitch Marner. It's been terrific, but outside of those guys, and I know that John Tavares has certainly struggled. He was certainly struggling going into the All-Star break, but I mean, he's been pretty consistent as well at the end of the day. So yeah, outside of the top guys, they haven't had much, and it's hurt them. But look, still a good regular season team. Case, you stated the obvious there, but it's true. Like, they're great in their wins and they're bad in their losses, where they collapse or they don't show up for a period or two, or it's a costly turnover, it's a missed read, whatever it is. But yeah, I think that in the offseason here, to address the holes, most of the surgery to this roster, again, from Brad Treliving, is going to come in the offseason. But in the meantime, we know he's looking for a defenseman, and we'll see what happens.
Well, I was going to say, just to wrap up, I have to go back to my previous point that I made about Tampa. Like, the core isn't getting any younger, and you have to do everything in your power not to waste a year. I realize that, and everyone does, that this team isn't built like it was even last season. I think last season might have been their best chance, honestly. Like, they had, up and down the lineup, they had depth at every position. Even though I didn't love every deadline move, like, it was still like they were well built. Now they're missing a lot of that. But even though that's the case, you can't waste a year when you have these players on your roster? Because like what are you doing? And maybe that is, maybe that results in not trading a first round pick or a top prospect and turns into trading, a second or a B-level prospect and getting a decent player to add to the roster and hoping for the best once you get in, because truthfully anything can happen. But that's it. You just can't waste a year. And I strongly believe in that.